Welcome to Risking Old Age in America. The 76 million baby boomers in the United States are getting older. Are we ready? We talk with thought leaders, professional advisors, and others with deep understanding of the generational challenges for both individuals and for the nation. Now here's your host, elder law and long-term care expert, Harry Margolis.
I'm delighted to be joined today by George Kinder, who's the founder of the Kinder Institute of Life Planning. He's a financial planner with many decades of experience and also many decades of experience training more than 3,000 other financial planners in the field of life planning financial life planning as opposed to just financial planning. And I guess I'd like to start, George, by asking you, what's the difference?
Well, one of my great students many years ago, who was the head of the whole Financial Planning Association, which had nearly 30,000 members at that point, he took our programs and he said, all life planning is financial planning done right. And I think that's a wonderful definition, because what it does, and a financial planner, a certified financial planner, is supposed to be a fiduciary, which means that they put the client's interest first. That's the number one thing they do. And that's what we do in life planning. We look at who the client is and what they really want, what they're passionate about, what they would miss if they didn't accomplish. And we make sure it happens. So that's life planning. I've been training people in it for 30 years, and it's been a lot of fun and extraordinary. We've got registered life planners in 30 countries. It's amazing. Wow,
it is amazing. So it sounds like you're starting with people's goals and the financial stuff comes after that rather than the other way around.
Yeah, what's really interesting, Harry, in the first meeting, even the Certified Financial Planning Board recommends you do money stuff first. But what happens is if you start with the money, the clients think hand the meeting over to you because you're expert on the meeting.
Right.
And that's not fiduciary. What we want is the client to be treated really as royalty in a way, as first, that it's who they are and who they want to be that we want to serve. And so if we dive into the money, they're all over the money and they're just waiting for our questions.
Right.
Whereas if we ask them why they're here, what they'd like to accomplish, if we worked for a period of time with them, what their life would be like and all that. And then just kind of kept quiet, keep an open-end question and just keep going with it. They eventually go to every single thing that they're concerned about, that they're hopeful for, that they wished for, that they longed for. And it comes, really, they do it because we're not your traditional financial advisor, or you're certainly not your stockbroker.
Right.
We listen really well. So what we do is we train advisors in listening skills and empathy, and in catching those sparks of inspiration that the client have to show that we're there for them.
I know you're kind of famous for your 3 questions, which I've looked at and I would find hard to answer. Maybe I would need the help of one of your life planners, but maybe you can tell us what they are and how that works.
Sure. That's what I'm most famous for. But I should say that before we even go to them, we do a good solid meeting of really just listening to the client. So we're not playing games with questions and all that. But then in the second meeting, which is a vision meeting, we look at these 3 questions and a number of other things, like what would your ideal life look like? What would your ideal year, week, day look like? That kind of question. So we're going at what might be really inspiring for the client. So in the 3 questions, the first one is just to kind of loosen you up. If you won the lottery, what would you do? It's a little bit lighter than that. If you had all the money that you needed for the rest of your life, and that's very precise, really, all the money that you need for the rest of your life, right. However you define that, what would you do? What would you do differently? How would you live your life? And of course, that's a lot of money for most of us, and we play with that and have fun with it. And then it's really to loosen people up, to get them to think about all the things that they've always wanted to do or they wish they could do. And then the second question, we get a little bit more serious. It's almost a legacy question. It's more up your alley, really, your field in a way. And that question is, if you went to the doctor and they shocked you with the news that you have a rare ailment, You'll feel as healthy as you feel right now, which is pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But you've only got 5 to 10 years left to live. You'll live at least 5, but before year 10, you're going to keel over, and you don't know when. So the question then is, what would you do if you knew that?
Right.
Instead of having all the money that you need, you got to have just what you have right now. What would you do differently? How would you live life? And there, of course, the bucket list comes out and all that kind of stuff. But mostly people begin to reflect more on their relationships.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, tends to be the number one thing. But there are other passions that are powerful and sometimes are more powerful for some people. One of them is their sense of values or spiritual in some way. Second one is spirit of creativity. I've been astonished in my career, my 30-plus year career, 50-year career, whatever it is, how many people have a secret creative passion. Sometimes for a lot of people, certainly in the industry that I'm in, the financial industry, that comes out as an entrepreneurial creativity.
I find half my baby boomer friends are joining rock bands, but
that's it, man. I mean, I'll tell you my own story about that maybe later. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And they want to play jazz at a nightclub on Wednesday nights, or just play in a band, and it's cool. So, and what I found in my younger clients is they want to have their videos on TikTok. They want to act in independent films or create an independent film. So it's really wonderful. It inspires you about human nature that we, in fact, have this ongoing longing for creativity and to make a difference. So that's the second question. And you can see it gets more into the legacy issue. And the third one has legacy written all over it, although at first you might not see it. This time what happens is you go to the doctor and this time she says, listen, I misdiagnosed. We're going in thinking, everything's cool. I misdiagnosed. You have a rare ailment, and unfortunately, it's come to term. You have at most a day left in your life. And the question is not what you would do. It's to ask you to reflect on all those things you'd anticipated doing, all those things that you'd long to do, you'd look forward to. And then ask yourself, what did I miss? Who did I not get to be? I think that's the big one. And what did I not get to do? So that's the final question. It's the deepest question. And we find that most life plans play off that question most of the time.
I assume that plays back to the first two questions that get to that question, and maybe they rethink their answers to questions 1 and 2.
Absolutely. Though sometimes there's just one answer that's so profound and so personal. Sometimes it's such a surprise even to them that it wasn't in 1 and 2. But both times you see overlap, which makes it fun. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some corollaries to your questions.
You bet.
Because these are great questions, and I think challenging questions. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself to answer for people, to come up with answers. But because we're all so busy most of the time just doing what we have to do and getting through the day and making a living and taking care of everything that's on our agenda. But what if instead of, in question 1, you have enough money for your needs? What if it's the situation, which I think is the case for a lot of retirees, you don't have enough money for everything you're going to need, especially if you might need long-term care? What would you say to them, or how would you work with clients on this?
Yeah, well, that's in a way why we have question number 2 and question number 3. In those questions, we don't assume. If the client goes, I'm often ask, hey, do I still have all the money I need?
Oh, right.
And they go, no, this time, let's make it poignant. And so you have just what you have right now. What would you do? So in a way, they've already thought that through and they've weighed. And this is the value of the questions is we all have to do this. Like you're saying, we've got our to-do list that is incredible. And we think it's what we're passionate about. And what these questions do is they bring up what we're really passionate about and then ask us to weigh what we're currently doing. And that's the function of life planning, what we're currently doing versus what we really would love to do, would long to do. And how is it Because so often, I'm sure you felt this in your life. I certainly did in my life. There would be so many things that I go, well, I'll get to that in a couple of years.
Right. Yeah. Get all this other stuff off the table.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Or I might get into it in retirement. And what a life planner will do is they'll bring those things up to the foreground. If they're meaningful to you, and usually they're quite meaningful, we'll bring them much earlier. So in a way, the questions already include that challenge in it. It's a big challenge. And if I were facing something like suddenly I had the financial safety net that I put together for myself over the years were pulled out from under me, I'd go right back to my 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, well, what is most important here? What is most profound? What is it that I have to live for? Because we ultimately don't live for the money, and we don't want to live for the money.
Mm-hmm.
The money should serve us. So that's really where I would go with it, I think. Yeah.
Well, important distinction. And people lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And partly because money is quantifiable, right? So
exactly.
you see what the number is in the bank, which you can't do with all these other things.
That's right. It is quantifiable, and moreover, you can get more of it, and the more you have, the more free you think you feel.
Right.
And also, you really, it is a little bit of an addiction. It's incredibly valuable. I mean, it's not. I don't want to underplay its value.
Right.
But the point of life planning is to bring that value, to weigh it appropriately.
Yeah.
What is your legacy? What is your mission? What were you born to do?
Right.
And there are things that we feel underneath it all that we really were born to do.
Right. So my corollary for your question 2 is, rather than your doctor telling you that you have 5 or 10 more years to live, or maybe they tell you you have 5 or 10 more years to live, but that during a great part of that time you're going to be disabled, going to need care, assistance from others. It may have to depend on family members or your own financial resources to pay for your care. And how does that factor into all this?
Well, again, you're bringing up really wonderful and very tough questions, Harry. Thank you for that. And they're not things that we haven't either encountered or thought about. In the early days of my practice, I would occasionally have someone who was as old as I am now, or 10 years older. And they would, and I wouldn't quite know how to work with them, given that maybe they only had 5 years left to live already. They knew that. And what I learned to do was to shorten that time frame. They might be expecting to live 5 years, and I might say, what if you only had 2 years left to live? Then what would you do? Because in the first one, we have unlimited money. In the second one, what we're doing is we're limiting the time that we have, because ultimately the time is all that we have, and more than money, right? Yeah. It's all that we got. So if I can limit it and make it more poignant for the client, they're going to search inside themselves and find, what is it? What is it that I need to do? So that was one of the things that I would do. And then you're raising a couple of questions there. One is the question of a shorter time frame, and the other one is disability. So I'll tell you here's my rock and roll story, if you will. So, at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020, I was one of the first people to catch COVID.
Oh, wow.
One of the first people in the West. And I caught it here in Hawaii. And I don't need to go through the story of it, but it was coming from San Francisco over to here. And on the plane, someone coughed over me the whole time. Oh, my God.
Right.
Yeah, I know. You just love that, right?
Yeah, that was before any vaccines, so you got the full brunt of it.
Before vaccines, before masks.
Yeah.
And so I got over here, and they didn't know. They diagnosed it as pneumonia because COVID hadn't been realized yet. But doctors since then have said, no, it seems clear you had COVID.
Yeah.
Well, what happened from that was I got long COVID.
Oh.
So you're looking at someone who 3.5, 4 years ago was walking 14,000 steps a day. That's my sport.
Yeah.
And I'm down around 4,000 or 5,000 steps a day.
Wow.
Well,
I can't tell looking at you on the screen.
but my day is about marshaling and monitoring my energy so that that when I'm on screen, I can be alive for you and be engaged.
Yeah.
But that's been the story of my life, is that
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I've had roughly a third the energy that I had 3 or 4 years ago. So what happened, because I knew the 3 questions and I knew the value of my life and my legacy, was that I immediately went to those 3 questions and I thought, what is it that I haven't delivered? And at that point, you didn't know how long you might die in a few months. You had no idea how long you'd live. Now we think it's long COVID is kind of like chronic fatigue, but for some of us with more issues, it's much, much more complex. But so I went back to the 3 questions, and I'm just going to tell you what I accomplished over the last, basically over 3 of those years. Over those years, I had been working on a set of books, 5 books of poetry and photography on this pond that I live on in Massachusetts. And it's a bit like Walden. And it was exploring what the nature of living in the present moment was, like mindfulness.
Yeah.
And so I was doing something for every single day of the year. I've been working on it for 30 years. So suddenly it came up to me, man, I could have launched this just like that. Life takes those things away from you.
Yeah.
Well, it lit a fire under me. I wrote those 5 books of poetry and photography. They're all published. They're available for free, pretty much, or at a very modest cost by subscription, online, digital. I also, my daughters were 16 years old that first summer, and I created a creative project for each of them that I thought would be really perfect for them. And one of my daughters, London Kinder, is very musical, really wonderfully musical, singing lead in her a cappella at Williams right now. And so I challenged her. I said, look, let's get together. Let's make an album together. So here's my fantasy. Going back to when I was a boy, 14 years old or so, I wanted to be a crooner. I wanted to write rock and roll and then ultimately folk songs. So I wrote, I think, 8 or 9 protest songs about what was happening in the world. And she contributed to that writing, and she wrote the music, and I contributed to that. And luckily her voice, much younger and much more beautiful than mine. But we're both there on Spotify. You can find the album on Spotify. And so we did that. So that's all in just a few years of just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen.
So it sounds like you focused on what mattered rather than all the other things that are coming in, because you only had the energy for that.
Right. I had to let go of a huge amount of stuff, which you might imagine. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much despite all that, taking the time to talk to me about this. I end all these conversations with the same 3 questions, and different questions from your 3 questions, and I think easier to answer, but maybe not. So the first is, what would your recommendation really for baby boomers and life planning be in terms of public policy?
I'm terribly sorry. I don't know how that happened. Do you want to start that over again so that David is okay with this?
Yeah, I didn't actually hear it, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
My
alarm off. I thought I'm totally off. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure where it was, but I'll try to do it again.
Question. Yep.
Yeah. So I end all my conversations with the same 3 questions. And the first one is a public policy question. So in the area of life planning, and I would think to some extent the shortage of funds for most people, what would your single most important public policy recommendation be to government leaders, other people making public policy in the United States?
First of all, I want to give you great credit, Harry, for bringing this up and for taking this to the level of concern that you have and asking it at the end of every interview. I love it. And I'm going to go much broader than you imagined.
Okay.
So, because I can easily imagine things that are specifically related to elder care and related to the financial crisis that's going to come up. I'm going to read you something that I'm putting at the end of every one of my books.
Okay.
And it's just a sentence. And what I want to say to all the people listening and share with you is that we've been, with all the things going on in the world, whether it's democracy or the planet or whatever our concerns are, racism, bigotry, false news, propaganda, we keep fighting kind of almost like rearguard actions. Mm-hmm. And then we're competing for the funds.
Yep.
And then we go to politicians who have largely been paid by large, huge contributors who have their own issues. And the study, I'm sure the study about oligarchy that Princeton did about 5 or 6 years ago, where they basically proved that our issues don't matter. It's the oligarchs that and they get their issues brought to the front and then deliver. So I went on tour for a while. I wrote a book called A Golden Civilization, wrestling with all of this. And what I finally have done is I've put that concisely into a single sentence, the legislative proposal. And what I would ask is that all of your policymakers come together and do this, because otherwise we're constantly going to be fighting, and the income inequality that exists in America is just going to grow and grow and grow. So here's my single sentence legislative proposal. A fiduciary standard of obligation is required for all institutions, corporate, nonprofit, and governmental, to place the interests of all stakeholders, of truth, of humanity, democracy, and the living planet that sustains us first, above their own self-interest. If we passed that as a piece of legislation, so much would just go by the wayside, and we would solve so many problems, including the elder care crisis.
That's definitely true. Good. Thank you. Well, I hope some policymakers will be listening. So my next question was for individuals. What would be your single most important recommendation to, say, baby boomers who are facing potentially their own elder care issues in the future?
Yeah, and here again, I want to do deep obeisance to and bow to all of the people that you're going to be interviewing here, who are going to be really thinking about the mathematics of the financial situation that your audience is going to be facing, because that's incredibly important. And I'm going to again go in a different direction from that. And that direction that I would take your audience to is, what is it that you can do with your life if you are disabled? What that you can do? The final book that I'm writing in this series of books is called The Three Domains of Freedom. And the first domain of it is, each moment is yours. Do you feel like that? And probably we don't. This is saying all those tasks get in the way.
Yes.
But what I would recommend is really diving into the practice of mindfulness, because what it is it's a practice of mastery of the present moment. I mean, you never get there, but that's what the practice is. It keeps returning you to the present moment. You get better and better at it. And your life is richer, more filled with joy and happiness and clarity and all the rest. So I would be looking at what are the things you can do if you're disabled, regardless of what the condition. And I think this is a great one to begin with. And
thank you very much, George, for all of this. And I have one final question, which is, who else should we talk to?
Yeah, get Elizabeth Warren on here.
We can, yeah.
Right. Not that she has great power, but among the life planning community, there's a person in the Netherlands, and I don't know if you'd go that far, but that I would talk to, named Louis Volbrecht. And Laura in my office can put you together with him. And the two people here that I would go to who are among the young leaders in the life planning and financial planning community, they've won awards from the XY community and other communities, are a man named Scott Frank and Christina Christina Livadari. She got married recently and changed her name. And Laura can put you together with all of them. They're dynamic in their engagement and so in their presentations and deep. And those two in particular have profound knowledge of the financial planning world. So you'd get more of that in this conversation. Yeah.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, George. Thank you very much. And I look forward to reading your new book when it comes out.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for all the great work you're doing. And thanks for inviting me.